everyone, Pablo here and welcome to a new video. I know it's been some time, but I am back with book reviews. It's a bit chilly. Let's jump straight to the video. So, as I was saying, it's quite difficult to do book reviews when you have a very busy timetable and you've got lots of things to do, because it's not just the recording of the video. You have to spend lots of time and energy sitting down writing. If you don't write scripts, you just do like bullet points. Like it's a very cerebral thing to do. But yes, I think it's time to do another book review, and in this video I'm going to review CORY DOCTOROW'S Homeland. I've talked about this book before in the channel. I started it at the end of December, and it was such a good read. Before we even start, let me just talk about the book, shall we? So Homeland is the sequel to Little Brother. It's a tale of Marcus Yallo, a very talented teenager that goes around trying to sort of subvert the control and the surveillance of the government. And in the first book, the way that he does it is a very innocent, though at the time it doesn't look innocent, but it's a very local kind of hindering of the system. It's not a full-blown rebellion, but he's doing rebellious acts. It is written by CORY DOCTOROW, and if you don't know, if you're on the internet and you don't know CORY DOCTOROW, then you need to do some research. This dude is one of the pillars of the internet. Just the other day I was reading, I think it was yesterday or the day before that, I was reading his Twitter and his blog. Go and visit it, it's Boing Boing. His blog just had its 20th anniversary. And let me just tell you, 20 years in the internet is, well, it's basically the internet. It's a very long time to be on the internet. And his ideas are quite revolutionary. Here on the background it says, as potentially important a novel of ideas as 1984. I would say even more important nowadays, because George Orwell did not anticipate the impact that the internet and the availability of because what we're doing right now, this is a very big brother thing, kind of thing to do, and the fact that we do it willingly would have astounded Orwell. Like, the extent to which we've taken the ideas in 19 God hydrate yourselves. The extent to which we have taken the ideas in 1984 and we have blown it out of the water, it's incredible. I know it's not really the kind of book that I would read, but I don't want to restrict the content that I do, and I love writing. I love reading all across the board. I love different genres, and this, it was just an amazing read. And let me just break down exactly why. If you haven't watched any of my book reviews before, the way I do in-depth reviews is I take the structure that Brandon Sanderson uses to break down a story. So I take character, plot, world building, and packaging, and I'll explain this as I go along. But then I added a one on top of that, just one that I added, which is the post-reading sensation, which is entirely subjective and should not be taken as part of the like serious review. I mean, it's serious, but it's not just entirely subjective experience. That way, I think it's a good way to break it down. I'm blatantly taking. I don't want to take credit for Sanderson's way of splitting a story, but I think it's a really good way of approaching a review. So let's go ahead. I'll stop my yapping and I'll get straight to it. I really hope the sun is not annoying. So the characterization in this book is quite good, and it's done through different means. So one, we have I'll talk about this more later. We have the prose, we have the type of writing that Doctorow uses, and it's very, very personal, very informal, very straight, like using colloquialisms, and that's how we get into the mind of a 20-year-old. So in this book, as I said, we follow Marcus Yellow, the same protagonist as in Little Brother. And in this book, the stakes are a bit higher. He, after the events of book 1 of Little Brother, he goes onto university, but then drops out because tuition fees are too expensive. And this is a matter close to my heart. And you can see one of the ideas right from the get-go, which is the incredibly expensive that education is, especially in America, and that has a very gatekeeping effect. Education should not be that expensive. Access to knowledge should not be that expensive, and it has a knock-on effect on your socio-economic status. If you can access to a good education, you don't have a good job, and if you don't have a good job in a society like America, you don't have a good health insurance cover, and then you have to decide whether you should eat or be treated for a medical condition that you have, that you probably are more prone to because of those stresses and that low socioeconomic status. So right, even from just explaining what the book is about, you get to see how powerful some of the criticisms and some of the discussions, some of the points for discussions are. And I think that's very good. Any book that makes you think about real things, because escapism is good, and escaping reality and sort of putting the continuous wave of life is. But we also need to realize at some point we need to stop not doing anything, because we perpetuate that. The first step to stopping something that you don't like in society is sitting down and reflecting and educating yourself, and this book is a really good one to start with if you want to do that. So as I was saying, Marcus Yellow drops out of college because he doesn't have enough money to pay tuition, and then he goes on to do different, like trying to get a job whilst pursuing his sort of computational enterprises, if you will, and again, he is a defender of free software like Linux or Linux. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you know, free software, free to use, free to mod, and also is a very good example of human ingenuity, how from human collaboration and the ability to put your mind and your effort into something, you get to create beautiful things. There is a part of the story where there is an underlying thread in the story, which is his inability to fix a problem with a 3D printer, and he wants to do like a glass statue or a sculpture in the desert using the dust and the sand rather. And that is amazing, and he only does it in a workshop that has no affiliation with any sort of official entity. It's just a couple of, well, not a couple, but it's a group of people, very talented people that want to get together and craft cool stuff, and that is so wholesome and is so nice to read from the enthusiasm of Marcus Yellow. And you can tell, I can see a lot of Doctorow in this character. Again, parasocial relationships. I have not met Cory Doctorow in my entire life. From what I can read that he's done, I understand that there is a lot of his personality and his ideas poured into the character of Marcus Yellow. So there is only one POV, it's just Marcus, and through him we can see other characters. We see his girlfriend Ange and Zeb and oh my god, I've forgotten her name. Masha. So this is a character from, if you've, I'll try to keep it as vague as possible to not spoil Little Brother if you haven't read it. I really recommend you do that. Just to finish off this first point, I think characterization is really good. And the majority of the characters are teenagers, as I said, but there is also some adults in this book, or sort of like interactions with adults in this book. And for the first time, the only adults that were allies in the first book were the parents of Ange and Marcus, but for the first time we see sort of an evolving opinion towards adulthood, and not every adult is an evil villain for a teenager, which I suppose is a side effect of growing up, of going from your teens to your 20s. The plot of this book was truly riveting. I mentioned it in a couple of videos that it was so, like, I started reading it, I was curious to see how the book started, and it was so powerful, so gripping, so fast-paced that I kept reading and reading, and I could only, like, it took me away from Rhythm of War. And if you know me, I'm a huge Sandersons fan. Right now in my life, if something takes me away from the Cosmere, that bodes well for the attraction of the story. And I want to keep this review spoiler free, so I'll just say that I've already mentioned that the events of this book are taken up a notch, and we get some political suspense. It's not just a teen in San Francisco doing, you know, being a bit of a rapscallion and being a rebellious little. There is some escalation into higher powers, as in senatorial races and things like that. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but yeah, I think that Doctorow has an uncanny ability to weave elements of the plot with the personality of the characters, and that is so refreshing, and that helps the story so well. And he is able to, from the beginning to the end, there is not a lull in the story. It flows perfectly. There is no unnecessary parts of the book. Every single page you read belongs in the book. So well done, Doctorow. Well done. You don't need my praise, but well done. Right, so in the world building, I normally go into this category of review really shines in fantasy, but normal books are not exempt from world building, and in this book, in Homeland, Doctorow manages to build good elements for the setting and creates a good setting for the story. In this section of the review, I wanted to talk about some of the ideas put forth by the book. The first one I've already mentioned, and I'm not going to repeat myself, which is the prohibitive price of tuition and the gatekeeping effect that it has in society. The second idea is an ongoing thread in this narrative, in this story, which is the amount of government surveillance and suspension of freedoms under the pretext of liberty. And I almost, from the cover and the story itself and the events of the story itself, I get the feeling that there is a bit of a defense of an anarcho-syndicalist kind of system of government, and it's difficult to talk about this sort of political ideologies because they've been persecuted for years and for centuries. If you are not from the US, you might not know of McCarthyism and the blacklist and all the persecution that US communists had in the past century. And I think that a society that represses any sort of new ideas, because democracy was a new weird idea that was repressed but could not be repressed for a long time. And I'm not saying I am a communist or an anarcho-syndicalist, or like, I really don't, to say that I would have to go and do some research. But I also recognize that democracy is not the perfect system. It's the best system that we have. I should correct myself and I should say representational democracy, because there are different types of democracy, and the one that we have right now, I think there are some loopholes that truly evil people use to circumvent some freedoms and for self-profit. In any case, anything that makes you think about your reality, and anything that starts a debate on, oh, is this the best way to govern ourselves, I think that's a valuable element to any story. And I think that if this book came out in 1950, he would be blacklisted. He would be persecuted because it's got very very powerful ideas about political ideology that make you think. Another idea that is put forth in this book is civil unrest and how you deal with it, and the ingenious ways to counteract the savage repression of police. And this is a very touchy subject because it is understandable. So a fair trigger warning, because I'm going to talk about some things that might be sensitive for some people after this awful, terrible year for civil rights. I don't think I've gone to any official multitudinous protests, and I realized that by doing that I put myself at a easy target for things like, well, you are silently condoning it and other things. But the thing is, I realize I come from a very privileged background. I've never felt the oppression that some people do. But if I went to a protest and I didn't know what the thing was about, and I didn't have a strong conviction, it would be performative. It would be what just everyone is doing, and that I do not want to do that. And 2020 was a mind-opening year in the sense that I did not know to what extent some races are persecuted, and I'm talking especially about the African American community, and how I knew the terrible history of America, and how it is unfortunately a country that was built on the backs of slaves, and that is something that will not be changed, and we need to confront it and we need to reflect on that. Again, America is not the only country that has enslaved and ravaged and pillaged people. The Spanish Empire did just as bad, even worse in South America. And to turn our heads away from that is a disservice to all of the innocent people that were killed in this way. I won't get too into it because it is a very a sensitive topic, and I don't want to bring anyone down, but I think that it's valuable that we talk about these things and we don't shy away from it. So in the book we see how Marcus deals with this brutality when it comes to suppressing a peaceful protest, and how things get extremely violent from in 1 second. We see things like the mood of the crowd and how it can go from absolute ecstasy to terror in minutes. So that was good to see that from the perspective of someone that knows about civil action and protest and things like that. So really good book if you want to sort of understand what really goes on in this setting. Adding on to the point before about on government surveillance, it's going to be a bit chaotic, but it's one of my videos. What were you expecting? It is also the concept of lawful interception is disclosed, and the ability that some governmental entities, governmental or otherwise, like companies, they have the ability to seize and to access information in the name of the law that really is not really warranted by that breach of confidentiality and privacy is not warranted. And this book makes you think of things like, it makes you read about the legality of certain things, and please FBI, don't come after me. This is a conversation. I'm not instigating anything, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
It makes you think about things like WikiLeaks and I don't know, Edward Snowden and things like that. It's just a reflection on our society. If you want to reflect about the current state of things in the world and use your a bit of grey matter in here. Read this book. So packaging. So when I talk about packaging, is how the story is packaged, not physically, which also is included in this section, but how the prose helps the pace and the characterization and everything. And I've already mentioned that it's really appropriate for the characters in play. They're teenagers, and it's an accessible language, and also it is a good prose as well to for reader accessibility, because at some point in this book, Marcus talks directly to you and teaches you how things work and explains why he's doing certain things, and you feel like you're having a conversation with Marcus. The only way to have that is through the vocabulary and the mannerisms and the grammatical particularities of a teenager, and that is accomplished in this book wonderfully. As for the physical packaging, how powerful is the cover? Again, it has very communist-y vibes. How simple a cover needs to be about how powerful it gets to be, because we get to see from the fist up in the sky, that represents the civil unrest, the community coming together to protest against an oppressive system of government, and then we just see a tactful Golden Gate bridge in the background to remind us that this is happening in San Francisco. I really like this cover. It's really powerful, and it calls to you. Like if you see it in a bookshop, you'll be like, oh, interesting, let's see. So for the post-reading sensation, I've been raving about this book for the past, I don't know, half hour, but in reality, I did not like the ending. Now, this has nothing to do with the actual ending. It has to do with how life really is. So I didn't like the ending, but at the same time, I did. Or rather, I liked that I didn't like it. Because I found myself thinking that, yeah, it was satisfying, and the story came to an end. We're used to a kind of story where things start and things end in a nice, tidy, neat way with a bow on top, and it's like, ooh, beautiful, perfect, everything aligns. In real life is not a story that you tell for the organizational or structural value, and the plot of our lives is incredibly varied and branches out and has different endings that normally don't even make sense. And I think that is a good that is a good way of explaining the way I felt by the end of this book. The fact that, well, this doesn't feel like a happy ending. It doesn't feel like a good ending, and that makes it a good ending. I sound like a crazy person. So, probably a bit more rambly than I was intending, but it is the first book review you do in a while. I think I'm happy with it. Go and read Homeland. The fact that the ending was a bit disappointing is not It's not reflective on the author. It's just my experience of it. I think that the amount of value and amount of discussion that you get from this book, it really warrants you going and reading about it and marinating in your ideas and reflecting about life and how things are nowadays. And read Little Brother as well. You can read other. I know Doctorow has more works, and I'll read more of his works, definitely. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure that you like the video if you enjoyed it, to subscribe if you want more content like this, and you follow me on social media. I yap a lot on Twitter. My Instagram is a tiny bit neglected, but I will probably pick it up back again soon, and on Goodreads as well. And I will see you in the next one.